It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, live from Liverpool, on the day a man is found guilty for the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel. Olivia's family celebrated the verdict today, 7 months after she was shot and killed while in her own home. Thomas Cashman, arrested in September last year, will be sentenced on Monday.
He's a coward. He's despicable. He made great play in the trial that he is a dad, and yet he's put Olivia's family through this trial.
Questions tonight about crime in this city. We hear from an ex-gang member from Liverpool.
I was mixing in those circles, I was mixing in those situations, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite to stand here now and say, you know, they're absolute scum, which they are, but I was once that same scumbag.
Also tonight on Sky News at 10. Allegations of bullying, harassment and discrimination in every fire and rescue service in England. The government defends its net zero strategy over concerns the UK will fall behind on the race to a green economy, and
dass wir auf meiner ersten Auslandsreise als König.
The King makes history at the German Parliament, speaking in German and renewing the Pledge of Friendship. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30.
Well, good evening, live from Liverpool. Thomas Cashman, a self-confessed drug dealer, was found guilty today of the murder of Olivia Pratt-Korbel. The 9-year-old was killed at her home here in Liverpool in August last year after Cashman fired gunshots into her family's home. Olivia's mother, who watched the verdict at Manchester Crown Court, said she was ecstatic with the news. In a moment, we'll look at what happened in the hours before the gun was fired. But first, here's my report. In the dark on a Liverpool street, these were the moments that were to lead to tragedy. Thomas Cashman, marked by police with a blue dot, pursuing his intended victim, a man called Joseph Nee, marked here in red. The gunfire recorded on a security camera and shown to the jury. It was the next shot that was to prove fatal to a young girl. Olivia Pratt-Korbel was just 9 years old, a unique, chatty, nosy little girl, her family said, who loved life and all it had to offer. It was a life cut short by a gunman who'd gone out to kill. A jury deciding that that gunman was Cashman, whose ruthless pursuit took the shooting inside Olivia's home. Yes. What Olivia's mother, Cheryl, made of the verdict was clear to see as she left court. She and her family sat through the trial. For them and for police, a moment of relief.
The circumstances around it were just abhorrent. She was cowering behind her mum because she was scared in her own home. You always feel as though you're safe in your own house. I think, as an investigation team, we could not believe that the gunman would continue to shoot into the house. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that before. The community had been disgusted by his actions. They've been in fear of him for a long, long time. He will know himself and had to carry that responsibility.
Olivia's mum, Cheryl, was injured by the bullet that killed her daughter. The jury heard her description of that night, the moment she knew Olivia, in her words, was gone. This was that intended target that night, convicted burglar Nee. Police say it was a petty dispute.
You're under arrest on suspicion of murder.
Cashman had denied being the gunman. He said he was going about his business as a high-level cannabis dealer that night. But the trial heard from a witness who said he'd gone to her home after the shooting, looking for a change of clothes and admitting having done Joey Nee. Police have commended her bravery in coming forward. At no time, police say, has Cashman shown any remorse.
He's a coward. He's despicable. He made great play in the trial that he is a dad, and yet he's put Olivia's family through this trial. I hope he reflects every morning when he wakes up behind bars and every night when he goes to sleep about what he's put Olivia's family through.
The guns used that night have still not been recovered. Police say this investigation continues even after a lengthy and complex prosecution.
All of Olivia's family and her loved ones, I can't imagine what they will have been through over the last few weeks, compounded, of course, by the fact that he refused to take responsibility or plead guilty at court. Nothing is going to bring Olivia back, but I do hope that this offers some level of comfort for the family, that we have been able to secure justice and he is now facing a life sentence.
Cashman was driven away from court but will be back there on Monday to be sentenced. Police say Olivia's death should not be in vain. A girl of wit and kindness, her family said, whose life was short but whose personality certainly wasn't. Well, during the trial, the prosecution detailed Thomas Cashman's movements on Monday, the 22nd of August, 2022. Making multiple journeys throughout the day, Thomas Cashman returned to his house for 8 minutes before leaving again at 8:30 p.m. He drove around the local area before parking his car and walking to Finch Lane, where he waited for more than 30 minutes for Joseph Nee. Joseph Nee was at an address on Finch Lane watching a football match with a friend, which finished at 9:52. Shortly afterwards, Nee left the house with his friend and turned on to Kingsheath Avenue. CCTV footage captured Joseph Nee being pursued by Thomas Cashman at 9:59. Shots were fired. Joseph Nee then ran into the driveway of the Korbel house. Thomas Cashman fired into the house. This was the moment Olivia Pratt-Korbel was shot. Thomas Cashman fled the scene, running through back gardens. Joseph Nee was picked up by a car. Well, after Olivia's murder, police in Liverpool made several arrests, but it took more than a month before any charges were brought. It was thought that a gang culture created fear among the community. Sky's Martin Brunt has been speaking to a former gang member about organised crime in the city.
We got into firearms and gangs at 21, and then just escalated us from there.
Sicarius McGrath was a major Liverpool gangster. He once roamed these streets where guns are used to enforce drug empires.
I was mixing in those circles, I was mixing in those situations, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite to stand here now and say, you know, they're absolute scum, which they are, but I was once that same scumbag.
And you put guns on the streets, by your own admission, I think.
Yeah, in massive volumes.
When Olivia was shot, the community was in conflict, outrage balanced against loyalty and fear of being called a grass.
Obviously, people are going to be reluctant, and I think, depending on who commits the murder, if they're established gang members, then people are going to be more reluctant.
Police struggled to get the evidence they needed for Olivia's murder.
Everyone says there's a code, no grassing, no this, no that. If it benefits criminals, they will grass each other up. It's what benefits them. They're not just going to do it for charity.
But for the members of the public who witness a big crime, how difficult is it for them, do you think, to give information?
It's going to be overwhelming, it's going to be scary, and they're not really going to want to get involved, but when it's a child, I think the real bit goes out the window.
But they will worry, won't they, about their own safety afterwards, if people find out?
They're going to, but that's for the police. They're going to worry, but that's for the police to reassure them that they're going to protect them and ensure their safety.
Police heard from one key witness early on, but got no direct evidence. No one who could identify the gunman, no forensics, no weapon. A reward of £50,000 wasn't doing the trick. It was boosted with another 100,000 from an anonymous donor, a businessman from Merseyside. The charity topped it up to a record £200,000.
When I heard there was a reluctance for people to come forward and testify, that's what really got my back up. I thought, well, I'm going to do something about this. It was an amount that would make people sit up and take notice. The bottom line is that this was horrific, the murder of a young girl. It doesn't come much worse than that.
16 years ago, a young boy, Rhys Jones, was shot dead only a few miles from here. I reported on it. Sicarius was in prison, but we both heard the loud calls for change.
They always say that whenever there's a young person stabbed or shot, they say enough is enough and they're going to take a stand, but communities never do. It's just all words. A couple of days or a couple of weeks later, they just go back to doing what they was doing and forget about it. It's only the families that are left suffering.
Last August, Olivia's death was one of 3 gun murders in a week. There have been 2 more in the city since.
Well, Martin's here with me now, and Martin, we have that conviction now, and the focus moves, I suppose, to Monday and sentencing and what we can expect from that.
Well, he's been convicted of murder on one of those 5 charges, so that's an automatic life imprisonment sentence. The issue for the judge will be to decide the minimum number of years that he'll have to serve, the tariff. And I imagine that's going to be pretty high. I mean, there are lots of things for her to consider, and of course we'll get all of her thinking because we believe the sentence is going to be broadcast live, you know, one of the first few since last year. So that would be fascinating to see how she balances things. I suppose one of the big issues is that he didn't intend to kill Olivia. I mean, I think by anybody's judgment, but he did intend to kill his real target, Joseph Lee, the man he was chasing and who he shot just before he fired the bullet that killed Olivia. So that will be part of her calculation. He's convicted of attempted murder. That too can carry a maximum of life imprisonment. I imagine that the judge will probably give him at least 30 years. Other factors, these show no remorse. The age of his victim, the fact that he was virtually terrorizing a community with what he did, all of that means a pretty long minimum sentence before he'll get a chance of parole.
We'll find out on Monday afternoon. Martin, thank you very much. It's been an emotionally charged day here in Liverpool. This is how the news is being received here tonight on the front page of the Liverpool Echo, the local newspaper here, their headline, Justice for Our Olivia. And I think the city really, you get a sense, has breathed a sigh of relief as a result of what happened at Manchester Crown Court today. It's a trial they've followed very closely. The trial was moved from Liverpool to Manchester because they were concerned at just how strong the feelings were in Liverpool and whether that trial could be carried out fairly here. But they've been watching very closely what has happened. As I say, the community around Olivia's family, the whole city, I think, breathing that sigh of relief. And I think most people's thoughts with Olivia's family tonight as they confront what they will have to confront for the rest of their lives.
Okay, Greg and Martin in Liverpool, thank you for now. Now, environmental groups have suggested they could once again take legal action against the government over its net zero plan. A 30-page document called Powering Up Britain has been published and covers everything from electric vehicles to sustainable finance. Despite this, there is a real worry the UK is falling too far behind in the race to a green economy. Our climate change and energy correspondent, Hannah Thomas-Peter, reports.
The Prime Minister and Energy Secretary Grant Shapps at the UK's National Nuclear Fusion Research Lab, here to launch a plan explaining how we will increase energy security while also cutting carbon emissions to net zero. Behind the smiles, though, there is real pressure building on this issue, with America launching a huge green subsidies package to tempt investors over the Atlantic.
Your Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has said today that it is a distortive global subsidies race. Hasn't it cost us the UK's lead on wind?
Not yet, and I'm concerned that it doesn't, or that it shouldn't. Over the last decade and more, we've spent 50% more as a proportion of our GDP than America on renewables. I welcome the fact that America have finally woken up to the opportunities here, and I hope we're going to sell a lot of stuff too.
The criticism is that the policies you announced today are really just about target setting and framework, and you are closing your eyes and hoping the market's going to do the rest.
Could not disagree more. This country has a huge lead in decarbonisation that not one of our European neighbours can match, by the way, and America is a decade behind.
The government's plan explains that it wants to phase out fossil fuels almost entirely by replacing them with more nuclear and renewable power. There's also help for consumers to reduce demand with expanded home heating and insulation schemes. And there's more investment in clean technologies.
The problem with some of the technologies that feature significantly in the government's plans is that they're relatively untested. Hydrogen, small nuclear reactors, carbon capture and storage, none of these things are affordable yet or available at scale.
And despite a court order forcing the government to reveal more detail on its net zero targets, some critics say the plan is short on new policies and new cash.
It isn't enough as it stands. How are we going to make sure that we get off gas for heating as quickly as possible and onto electric technologies? Is the money that they've promised for insulation enough to really help people with their bills in the long run? So this is a step on, but it's not the whole journey.
But others, at the sharp end of the green revolution, are happy with the progress.
Absolutely massive news for our business and for everyone around the country. We're in an energy crisis, we're in a cost of living crisis, so the government investment in energy efficiency and retrofit is massively welcomed by us.
Promises are one thing, but now net zero must actually be delivered, a task growing more complicated by the day. Hannah Thomas-Peter, Sky News.
Now, the government has been warned it is lagging behind the likes of the US and the European Union on its net zero ambitions as companies choose to invest their own green strategies elsewhere. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso has been looking at how the UK compares.
If the UK is going to cut carbon emissions, hit net zero targets and deliver energy security, it's going to need the green industries that will deliver the energy transition and transform the economy. So what's the government promised to make that happen? Well, there's £20 billion over 20 years to explore carbon capture. Now, that's an unproven technology, but it could take emissions from polluting industries and bury them beneath the North Sea. They promised £240 million for green hydrogen, which could decarbonise some industrial processes, and another £1 billion for home insulation, which could cut demand. And there's £500 million for wind farm development and electric vehicle charging. Now, almost all of this money had already been announced, but it still sounds like quite a lot, right? Well, not compared to the huge subsidy programmes launched in the United States and Europe. Last August, Joe Biden announced the Inflation Reduction Act, a $369 billion package for green industrial development. The European Union plans €250 billion of its own subsidies to try and keep some of those industries in Europe. Now, faced with this transatlantic arm wrestle for green industrial development, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has effectively conceded the UK can't compete and wants to make up for being smaller by being smarter. This is what he told The Times: "We are not going toe-to-toe with our friends and allies in some distortive global subsidy race. We will target public funding in a strategic way." Now, part of the plan is to harness the financial clout of the City of London. Hunt says reforms to the way insurers are allowed to invest could free up £100 billion for green technology over the next decade. But to put that in perspective, the Treasury thinks the energy transition will need up to £600 billion of capital investment over the same period. And industry says the UK has just been too slow to respond.
I think private capital is very important. You need government to create the framework to enable private capital to invest, but we need the policies, we need the framework, and some of the discussions that have been announced today, especially around the planning rules and things like that, that will build investor confidence.
The investment climate has become a little clearer today, and there are huge opportunities in the green transition. But business, investors and environmentalists remain sceptical that this package does enough to deliver Britain's climate goals.
Right, let's just bring you some breaking news that's come into us in the last few minutes here at Sky News, and it concerns NATO and the war in Ukraine. The Turkish Parliament have voted to allow Finland to join the military alliance. You'll remember that both Finland and Sweden had asked to join NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. That ascension to the group was being held up by Turkey and also by Hungary, but the Turkish Parliament have now voted to allow Finland to join NATO, following on from the Hungarian Parliament, which voted to ratify Finland's attempt to join the military alliance earlier this week. So now just Sweden is the outstanding Nordic nation trying to join the military alliance, and more pressure will now be going on both the Turkish Parliament and the Hungarian one to allow Sweden to join. More on that story as we get it throughout the evening. Now, a report here has found that there are allegations of bullying, harassment and discrimination in every fire and rescue service in England. The Fire Inspectorate said some examples include joking about the rape of female colleagues and using racial slurs. Well, the Home Office has said that it is deeply concerned by the findings and that it will continue to work closely with fire and rescue services to make sure the issues are urgently addressed. Well, Sky News has spoken to one serving female firefighter about her experiences in the service and a warning that this report by Sadia Chowdhury has detailed descriptions of sexual harassment allegations and explicit images.
It seems so brazen, the way this firefighter takes a photo of himself. It looks like he's at work. He's even in uniform. And he's not the only one. We spoke to the woman who was sent these images.
I try and avoid people that have sent me pictures like that now, and I try and act as normal as possible, but it's always at the back of my mind. A lot of sexual favours asked for. A female colleague was pinned in the corner by more than one firefighter and demanded sexual favours. Another was sexually assaulted by a colleague as he walked past. Then he took photos of her changing.
Has anything like that ever happened to you?
Yes, I haven't discussed it before, but there was a time after an evening out that I did get pressured into sleeping with a colleague when I didn't want to. If I was sober, I would never have consented to it. After that, my mental health was really bad. I regretted it so much that I let myself get that drunk. I didn't expect to get upset. Last year, I actually made an attempt to take my own life because of how he made me feel.
It is these types of stories that His Majesty's Inspectorate warns about. Bullying, harassment, discrimination. Bad behaviour often dismissed as banter, and victims too scared to come forward.
The report is damning, not just for fire services here in London, but in every part of England. And some of the examples are really disturbing. A senior officer referring to a black colleague using a racial slur, and on another occasion, two male firefighters joked with a female colleague that they were going to rape her, before the three of them play-acted that rape out.
Inspectors say that is just the beginning.
I can't guarantee this is not the tip of the iceberg. I can't guarantee there's not predators or racists, homophobes, sexists within the fire and rescue service. But what I can guarantee, that if our recommendations are implemented, things will improve.
Those recommendations include new misconduct standards to be introduced. There are also calls for a national barred list and background checks on every firefighter and staff. Anyone found unfit could lose their job. The Home Office described the report's findings as deeply concerning. A spokesperson said, "We have been clear in our recent proposals that fire reform is urgently needed. We want to see fire and rescue services where everyone is welcome, treated with respect and able to thrive."
It needs to change all over. The guys that don't report things when they see it are the ones that aren't helping everyone else, because cases just get dropped on a balance of probabilities.
This fearless profession, she says, has been left too scared to speak. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
Now, if you've been affected by any of the issues raised in Sadia's report, you can contact the Samaritans on 116 123, or you can text SHOUT to 85258. Now, the Labour Party have launched their local election campaign. Sir Keir Starmer described the Prime Minister as Mr 1% and said that a Labour government would freeze council tax. The local elections are just over a month away and may offer an indication as to whether the Labour Party's poll lead can be turned into votes. Now, in an interview with our political editor, Beth Rigby, the Labour leader confirmed he's prepared to do what it takes to win. Here's her report.
The next Prime Minister of this country, Keir Starmer.
That's the hope, now the hard yards. Labour's leader today embracing the task ahead and looking like he means business.
These elections really, really matter, and we've got to go out and we've got to win them.
To do that, Starmer needs to secure council seats in Swindon and beyond, calling on the government to freeze council tax as he kicks off his local election campaign. But the path to the general election already firmly on his mind. Important moment for you in the quest to win a general election, right?
Yeah, they are. They're very important for a number of reasons.
When you come out of these local elections on May the 5th, what does victory look like?
Well, look, we want to take every seat we possibly can in these local elections. They're very, very important to us. But I'm measuring this on the road into the next general election.
You've got to show you're in serious contention. I'm putting it to you that what I'm looking at is whether you can get over 1,000 seats. Is that fair?
Well, look, we want to get as many of those 1,000 seats as we possibly can. I'm measuring the progress from the general election 2019 to the general election in 2024.
The 2019 general election under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour's worst performance in over 80 years. This Labour leader preventing his predecessor from standing at the next. A drastic attempt to close the Corbyn chapter for good. You described Jeremy Corbyn as your friend, and now you've kicked him out.
There's one person who is responsible for the fact that Jeremy Corbyn will not be a Labour candidate at the next election, and that's Jeremy Corbyn.
You're prepared to be ruthless to win?
I'm prepared to be ruthless to ensure that we have a Labour government. I have been ruthless in the change in the Labour Party.
But people here are not yet fully convinced. Do you think they're going to win the council?
I think there's a real hope that they will.
Yeah.
But like many towns, there's a big divide, and lots of people, I think, still will vote for the Conservative.
It comes across as most trustworthy, but the proof of the pudding is actually, it's not until you're in government, is it?
To me, he does an awful lot of shouting, but I don't hear him coming up with a remedy to fix what he's talking about.
This campaign firmly underway, but there's still a lot of ground yet to gain and time to go. Beth Rigby, Sky News in Swindon.
Now, authorities in the US city of Nashville have released recordings of the 911 calls made by those fleeing Monday's mass shooting at an elementary school. 6 people, including 3 children, were shot dead by Audrey Elizabeth Hale, a former student. Our US correspondent James Matthews reports.
Let's go!
Body cam images have taken us inside the Covenant School as the horror unfolded. Now there is audio of emergency 911 calls that lay bare the fear, panic and confusion as staff and pupils hid from a killer in the building.
Metro Police, open the door!
One was from an adult. She says she was hiding in an art room closet. She hears gunfire and tells children with her to be quiet.
Are you in a safe spot right now?
I think so.
Are you hearing shots now?
No.
Okay.
We're in the art room closet.
Okay.
Yes, I hear another shot.
You did?
I'm hearing more shots.
Okay.
We're upstairs by the art room hallway.
You're upstairs by what hallway?
In the art room.
Art room.
Yes, please hurry. I'm hearing you.
They're coming.
And they sound kind of close.
Just try to stay quiet. I don't know what's going on there.
Okay.
But,
Another call is made by adults escaping the school. One provides a description of the killer in camouflage.
All I saw was a man holding an assault rifle shooting through the door. Okay, he's currently in the second grade hallway. Second grade stairs. Okay, so, a white man. Camouflage, he had a vest on and a assault rifle. Camouflage on.
Gun control! Thursday saw protests for stricter gun control at the Tennessee state legislature. Emotions are raw here. The more they learn about the murder in their midst, the more it amplifies their call for change. James Matthews, Sky News, Washington.
A serving Metropolitan Police officer could face criminal charges over the fatal shooting of Chris Cabba. Mr. Cabba was killed by a single shot fired through the windscreen of the car he was travelling in September last year. The Independent Office for Police Conduct has referred the case to the Crown Prosecution Service. The White House has said that it is deeply concerned after a reporter from the Wall Street Journal was arrested in Russia on suspicion of spying. The Federal Security Service says that Evan Gershkovich was detained in the city of Ekaterinburg while allegedly trying to obtain classified information. King Charles has become the first British monarch to address Germany's parliament. As the Queen Consort looked on, he talked of a special bond between the two countries and the pride he felt in the partnership. And he delivered the majority of his speech in German. Our royal correspondent Laura Bundock was there.
Huge expectation as the King entered a packed parliament. This was a moment for the monarch to deliver. And for 23 minutes, that's what he did.
It gives me particular pride to be with you once again, now as King, and to renew the special bond of friendship between our two countries.
Speaking mostly in German, he talked of World War II and the late Queen's role renewing relations.
Meine Mutter wusste, welch enorme Errungenschaft diese Versöhnung bedeutete. Und mit ihren vielen Besuchen in Deutschland wollte sie ihren Beitrag dazu leisten. Vielleicht ist das der Grund, warum sie sich einen besonderen Platz im Herzen der Deutschen eroberte.
From past conflicts to current and strong words on Ukraine.
Der Angriffskrieg gegen die Ukraine hat unvorstellbares Leid über so viele unschuldige Menschen gebracht.
And there was light relief too, from football to Monty Python.
And perhaps most importantly, for the last 50 years, we have laughed together, both at each other and with each other.
The first British monarch to address the Bundestag. And for the chamber, he'd met the moment.
Delivered in both English and German, the King's speech felt personal. This was a message of historic friendship and alliance, no mention of Brexit or division. It is the UK looking forward and focusing on the future.
The King is known for his concern about Ukraine, and to that he visited this immigration centre, helping those who've recently fled. The day's other engagements in tune with the themes of this visit, celebrating culture and building bridges in more ways than one. The King with this joint German and British Army unit. But perhaps most relaxed here, getting a feel for Germany's organic farming. Laura Bundock, Sky News in Berlin.